What's up, guys? Today we're breaking down Bryce Young, the tiny quarterback out of Alabama who's probably going second overall to the Houston Texans, also the winner of the 2021 Heisman Trophy. Bryce Young's a really good quarterback who's really, really exciting, and a lot of people think that if he were a little bit taller, he'd be a generational talent. I don't necessarily think that's true, and frankly, after going back and watching all of his film again to make this video, I'm not even sure I have him better than CJ Stroud anymore. It is a dead heat, and the difference between them is minuscule. I think that the thing with Bryce Young is that his upside is really big because he can operate a scheme and he can also operate outside of a scheme. I think with CJ Stroud, he's a little bit more rigid. He needs things to be pretty for him. And if they are pretty for him, he'll be very productive. But if things are messy, if things are difficult, I don't think he can transcend, whereas I think that Bryce Young can a little bit. That being said, the floor on Bryce Young is much lower because we've never seen a quarterback this small with this, shall we say, underwhelming of physical talents. My comp for Bryce Young is Deshaun Watson. Just on the field, they play similar styles, even though their skill sets are a little different. This comparison comes from the fact that both quarterbacks will take a clean pocket and a well-functioning play, and they will turn it into a scrambling chaos play because they handle that chaos better than all the defenders they're playing against. They are a maestro amongst mayhem, and they will utilize that to create high-low reads where man defenders or single island defenders will have to pick between guarding the quarterback and the receiver, and they just handle that better than anybody else. Additionally, even the worst receivers eventually going to get open if given enough time. And that's basically just the way that these guys play. Enough summary, enough illusion, enough of my face. Let's get to the film. The first trait we're going to talk about is range. Range is just how far he can throw a ball. And he puts his whole ass into this ball, runs up into it, releases it from his own 34-yard line, and the receiver catches it at the opposite 10. That is a 56-yard ball with his entire body weight, all of his momentum getting a running start into it. You'll see it again here. Most of his momentum going forward, and this ball goes about 43 yards before it dies and is underthrown. Overall, Bryce Young has average NFL starter range, but not much better. About velocity. Now, first, we're going to see some clips of Bryce Young throwing the ball with lots of zip. This is how quickly the ball can be thrown. And here you'll see a 30-yard line drive to the outside on a corner. Low trajectory, not a lot of arc, ton of spin rate on that ball. That's what you want to see. So even though Bryce Young has an average NFL starter's arm strength, he gets all of that arm strength into the ball when he throws it. That's why I give him a B+ on zip. And then, again, on this deep out, you're going to see the same thing. The ball isn't, flying through the air like Josh Allen's, but it gets there. It is a line drive. There's no wasted movement by the receiver. That's good stuff. On this final play, Bryce Young's deep ball hit or miss. However, here you'll see he can and often does put some feathery touch on that ball. He really knows how to float it in there when he needs to. It's really good touch, and being able to take something off of it right there, that's why he has above average NFL touch. I give him a B+ in that regard as well. B+ velocity, B range. Here, we're going to just briefly touch on accuracy. I can't really show all of the ways in which he's inaccurate or accurate because that's a volume thing, right? What I want you to take away from these quick 3 clips is just that Bryce Young is very accurate. That's why he's a ballyhooed prospect, but a lot of it comes when he is under no pressure with wide open windows, and he's not infallible. That's all. Next up, I have pocket IQ. This is basically poise, ability to take a hit to make a play, and understanding how to manipulate the pocket to avoid excess pressure or undue pressure. Bryce Young is amazing at navigating the pocket. Just look what he does on this play, right? The pump fake, the movement. This is 3 positive movements on one play. Really good job. But, first of all, he doesn't have poise. On this particular play, you'll watch from here, clean pocket, open receiver down the middle. I understand it's muddy. He's also got the flat if he wants to be a coward about it. And he doesn't like it. He bails out of a clean pocket and opens himself up for a sack. Now, he ends up escaping because he's incredible as a playmaker, but that's the next trait. His just ability to understand what's going on in the pocket isn't that great. Right here, this is the best pocket he'll ever get in the NFL. And he gets a little bit scared because 18 here, this defensive end on the right, gets inside leverage a little on his tackle. That being said, this is blocked off. The center is blocked off easy. If you're really, truly terrified, take a step up right here, a little slide, or throw to the flat. He doesn't do that. He's trying. I don't know if he's greedy, if he sees something he wants more. That's probably what it is because he ends up throwing deep, but he rolls back away from his tackle, right? So right here, if the defensive end wants to get to Bryce Young, he's got to go through the tackle. When Bryce Young bounces outside, the tackle's not allowed to hold him, right? That's a penalty. So he just says, fuck it, you're on your own, Bryce. And Bryce is really athletic and quick, and he does great things, and he makes an awesome throw on the run here. But that's not great poise. That's not great understanding of the pocket. He does show the ability to do that occasionally. Right here, watch him slide and step up, throw through pressure. That's really good. But it's not consistent enough, and it doesn't happen enough when he's got muddy pockets. You see a lot in the red zone, especially with college quarterbacks who are spoon-fed these really easy looks typically, like Bryce Young is. He panics a little bit, and he lets things get away from him when he's under pressure. Again, just a little bit of a muddy pocket, a little bit of muddy zone coverage down in the red zone, and he ignored the wide open slant by the slot receiver. I think that's Burton right here. He ignores the fact that on the improv, Burton's going to break into a corner. So if Bryce Young just sets his feet and lobs it up here in between the boundary and the receiver, he's probably got a touchdown or at worst a throwaway. Instead, he tries to bail it outside, and he's just not fast enough to turn the corner on a really good SEC linebacker like that. So here's the dilemma. Despite the fact that Bryce Young's pocket awareness isn't that great, his ability to make plays and move around the pocket is incredible. And so I tried to balance that out a little bit. While I give his pocket IQ a C because he takes a lot of sacks he shouldn't, I gave his playmaking an A- because he makes a lot of plays he probably shouldn't. And I think this is a really good example right here, this play against LSU. Right? So you're coming out of the spread, and you've got a wide open receiver in the middle. This should be your primary read. He's looking right at him. But one of the reasons that Bryce Young struggled so mightily in this LSU game is that they brought heavy fronts, right? They blitzed and they mush rushed, which means that these defensive interior players aren't trying to get upfield. They're just trying to make things messy and difficult for Bryce Young to see through. And because of that, he holds the ball an extra second, doesn't hit that open over route to, I think that's number 7 right here where my mouse is, and instead eats a sack. Or at least he would eat a sack if he wasn't so incredibly shifty and elusive. So that's bad pocket awareness, but here is where the playmaking comes in, the Russell Wilson comp comes in. Bounces inside, bounces outside, and ends up finding his receiver really, really late in the play, sneaking behind the defense. In fact, it's number 7 again, the guy he was supposed to hit earlier, but now it's an easy 30-yard touchdown because he's basically just outlasted the defense's capabilities. Again, we've already seen this play, but Bryce Young struggling to read from the pocket. Right here, he should be dishing this ball out to this receiver here, or, God forbid, if he had a really strong arm, which he doesn't, obviously, he could throw out to this left sideline. Either one is tough, I get it. He could also just take a 2-yard gain and slide. But, instead, he's going to throw a little interception in the end zone on first down. Just in terms of his mobility as a runner, he's good, not great, but he's never going to be a real running threat, right? He's not going to be like a Josh Allen or like a Lamar Jackson. We went a little bit out of order, but we've seen a few things. First of all, we know Bryce Young gets into the right protection often. We know that he can check plays at the line audible, and we know that he's almost always on the correct first read. We give him an A- in pre-snap IQ. However, his processing after the snap is lesser. On this play in particular, watch as 81, the tight end Latu goes in motion, and this play is designed, if it's against zone, to be a little bubble screen right here because you're flooding, right? You've got 2 cornerbacks here, and you've got 2 receivers to occupy them with a tight end who's now completely uncovered. Get him the ball, 2 blockers, make him break 1 tackle, and see if he can get a big play. Bryce Young looks to the wrong side because he thought that this was man when he saw the 2 high safeties. He realizes all too late, I've messed up. If he would have stayed looking to the right, he could have thrown his little bubble screen. He could have thrown this in-breaking route here, which is a little more dangerous. I probably wouldn't recommend it. But realizing that he's made a grievous mistake and this is not man, he should just be tossing the ball out to his running back because he's in his own end zone. Instead, he doesn't really know what to do. He holds on to his read for too long, and that leads him to throw the ball out of bounds to his receiver. Again, sometimes when he gets pressure, and here, there's pressure. This play was designed to be basically a high-low read. They thought it would be man, and that somebody would take the tight end, Latu, again, or take Bryce Young. He could just play monkey in the middle and get a few yards. That's not how it ended up working out. That's not really his fault. But here, he doesn't handle the rushers properly, and he makes a really bad decision throwing the ball into harm's way. Again, the red zone, this is where guys like Young and Stroud are always going to struggle, and we've seen this play a bunch of times already. Just a panic move, and panicking is part of post-snap IQ. You can see here that if he's quick with it, he can get the ball to his running back with 7 yards to the goal line and 10 yards of space. Plenty of time, plenty of room. Instead, he breaks down here, and instead of playing a 2-on-1 game with this linebacker, throwing the ball out to his running back again, he wants to be clever because he thinks that he can loft this ball over the linebacker and lead his receiver on the slant. But the problem is, aside from this being a poor decision, he throws behind. This is all just bad processing and recklessness, things that you don't want a veteran quarterback to be doing. And finally, here you go, just tried to get cute looking safeties off with his eyes, which he does pretty damn well, and ends up throwing it directly into a cornerback. Finally, the only team that had the balls to play press coverage against Alabama was Cincinnati in the semifinals of 2021. You can see they play press. There's still plenty of room, but Bryce Young doesn't like seeing all this crowding over by his primary routes. He pulls the ball down and panics, and then after that takes a bad run. And finally, he struggled a little bit with disguise too. Cincinnati got ballsy here, and they lined up with 2 safeties over the top. Makes you think cover 2. They lined up 1 on with each cornerback having their own receiver in the spread. This tells Bryce Young, oh, it's just going to be 2-man over. Wrong. About 5-10 yards into the play, the defensive backs break off into a zone, right? At least on this side of the field. And now Bryce Young is stuck. You can see him. He's staring down this receiver here at the top, at the 40-yard line. And when he gets to the top of his route, he's still looking at him like wanting that to come open, even though it's not gonna. This curl is against a flat zone. That's a pick 6 waiting to happen if he throws it. And eventually, he just throws the ball away because he got. When it comes to accuracy, I'm most interested in deep accuracy, and that's where Bryce Young struggles the most. You can see that first one was just completely wayward. The second one, perfect. So not a lot of consistency, and it's really frustrating. On this one, you can see that it's not only a bad decision to go deep, which I actually kind of like that aggression, but he has this really bad tendency of leading his receivers way too far to the sideline. He throws a decent deep ball to wide open receivers, like you'll see right here, but when things get tighter and it's more of a traditional go ball, he struggles a lot. I noticed at least a couple of missed deep balls in every single game that I watched from him, and it was really frustrating because that's where he's going to make his money as a chaos quarterback. I gave his deep ball a C+, but I gave his intermediate ball an A-. It's a little more complicated than that, though. His intermediate ball is actually really accurate. You can see here, even when things are working against him, he puts the ball in a pretty decent spot. It's just that he can't practically throw that intermediate tier ball. It's not that he doesn't have the arm strength, it's just more of a function of height, and that's a suicide ball, but it's really well placed. I mean, that's the only place he could put it. He doesn't have incredible zip, but he gets the ball in with perfect anticipation. He ends up throwing a lot of suicide balls because his anticipation is better than his zip. Let's get to Bryce Young's kryptonite, though, and I alluded to it a little bit earlier. Bryce Young struggles with the middle of the field because he's short, and he is scared of being hit, and because of that, he has to throw upwards. You see in these first 3 passes, all of them, he's throwing the ball with an upward trajectory and missing high because he's trying to get the ball over the line. He can't throw down on a line like a Josh Allen can. He also doesn't have incredible arm strength, so he can't zip the ball in there as quickly. He needs to put a little bit more arc because he doesn't have elite velocity, right? On top of the fact that he misses high a lot because he has to throw with an upward trajectory to get the ball over the line and then bring it back down to get it to his receiver before the linebacker or safety crushes him, Bryce Young really struggles with the middle of the field in terms of vision as well. Against LSU, it was almost crippling. Now, I've slowed this down here so you can see the play is designed to go to number 3 right here in the slot. Now, I understand that you might want to go to the end zone, but when you have an obvious cover 2 zone like this, you need to just throw the ball and get the yards you can, see if your receiver can make a play. it's not even that he can't see over the line. It's that, look, this is what he's looking at. He sees his guy, and he knows he could probably get it there, but he'd have to throw it low to protect him from number 30 and to keep this linebacker from jumping on it. Because he can't throw over 70's head as easily as, say, a Josh Allen or Justin Herbert, who are much taller, because he can't throw over it with a low downward trajectory to protect his receiver, he basically panics and passes on this route. Because he's stuck on this route so long, knowing that that is the right play but not one that he can physically make, he misses number 5 right here, sneaking out of the backfield for what would have been the second option. And because of that, it turns into a scramble drill, and he's not a good enough athlete to outrun real linebackers. Here's another example of a pocket not even being messy, just not being pristine, right? He takes really deep drops he's 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage when he drops back. He's got a pretty decent pocket still, and he's got a middle of field receiver, but because it's harder for him to throw that ball, right? If he's going to hit Latu right here, this tight end, he needs the ball to go up and down rather than just a straight line drive typically. And by then, he's already pulled his eyes down and begun running. On the very next play, you have another receiver breaking open across the middle, but he's busy looking at this rush. He's afraid that this rush might get to him, so he bails outside the pocket, and then he tries to throw through a defender, but he's not big enough to do it. So in sum, Bryce Young is really good when everything breaks down. He is a maestro of mayhem, an orchestrator of chaos, but he has a really hard time with the middle of the field, partially because the ball just sails on him, as we went over, and partially because he just can't see stuff. And that's part of his IQ. It's part of his accuracy. I think his best fit is a wide zone scheme where he gets a lot of play action rollouts or bootlegs, and he gets open on one half of the field out of the pocket and just lets himself play those high-low reads like I talked about Deshaun Watson doing. The biggest worry I have about my evaluation is just that he's certainly one of those guys who gets it, like an Aaron Rodgers or a Joe Burrow, where they just seem to understand the game. Patrick Mahomes has got it. It's that it factor, but the game doesn't overwhelm them. They don't get lost in the weeds. They see it the way you see background football at recess. And then finally, I think that it's pretty clear from this video, but a lot of people compare him to Kyler Murray or even mini Mahomes, and I think that those are both just totally wrong. Because, yeah, he's a little smaller than Kyler Murray, and yeah, he loves to improvise like Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes basically gets by off of having a cannon of an arm. Like, that is his thing that makes him great. And Bryce Young has an average at best arm. Kyler Murray is a really incredible athlete and runner who also has a very strong arm and a killer deep ball. Bryce Young's deep ball is okay, and his arm strength is, again, not so good. He's also not like a true runner as much as he's just very mobile, right? I see Bryce Young as a pretty average NFL quarterback. I think there's a chance he busts entirely, and it's largely going to be because he's not very physically talented and he's not very big. So his floor is very low, because if he doesn't get it, if it turns out that all that wide spread out easy college offense that Alabama ran, if that doesn't translate properly to the NFL, he could just be screwed, right? If he's not mentally up to the task, and he's physically never going to be up to the task, what do you got? You got nothing. But there's also a really high ceiling, because if it turns out that he is very intelligent, he's a great facilitator of offenses, and he can operate outside the offense a little bit, well, now you've got something pretty good. So his ceiling is to be roughly a top 10 quarterback, but his floor is that he could be a bad backup. And that is why I struggle him versus CJ Stroud, who has a very defined range of outcomes, right? CJ Stroud's probably going to be an okay starting quarterback, and he could be a decent starting quarterback, but he's never going to be awful, right? He's probably not going to be like bottom of the barrel inoperable. Overall, this just leaves me wishing that I had more film of Tanner McKee, because I really want to put Tanner McKee above Bryce Young at quarterback too. But for now, it looks like I'm going to have to stick with Levis, Young tied with McKee, and then Stroud, and then Richardson, and then Hooker and Hayner and Jaron Hall, because they don't. Anyway, until next week when I finally break down QB1 Will Levis, I'll be grinding film. Asta.